3 months after my wife brought the scholarship kid to live with us, I found the bottle of Aura Lube in her purse. I didn't scream, I didn't start a fight. Instead, I quietly swapped the lubricant with a bottle of industrial-strength superglue. That night, both my wife and the kid she was sponsoring ended up in the hospital. Staring at the gaudy little bottle in my hand, I felt a chill spread through me, so deep it was like I'd been plunged into an icy cavern. My body wouldn't stop shaking. I turned it over and over, hoping, praying that it wasn't what I thought it was. But a quick scan with my phone's barcode reader brought up the cold, hard truth. It was the extra-strength version. Expensive, and it had been opened, used. A faint, cloying floral scent clung to the nozzle. Julia and I had been in love for over a decade and married for 7 years. We didn't have children, but we'd never once had a serious fight. She had, by all accounts, fulfilled her duties as a perfect wife. I'd spent the last 10 years building my company, growing it from a tiny workshop with a handful of employees into a corporation of over 1,000. Through it all, she was the one who managed my life, my meals, my home. Everyone agreed she was the perfect wife, the ideal CEO's spouse. But faced with the undeniable proof in my hand, I had to admit the truth. Julia was cheating on me. In all our years together, we had never been this adventurous. While she was in the shower, I went through her purse with trembling hands. The usual stuff was inside: wallet, makeup, her phone. I picked up the phone and typed in my own birthday, a password we'd always shared. It unlocked immediately. I felt a flicker of confusion as I opened WhatsApp. My name was pinned to the top of her chats, labeled my husband. I scrolled down. It was all normal conversations with her friends and family. Aside from the regular money transfers to her parents, 5,000 here, 10,000 there, with the largest being 100 grand, nothing seemed out of place. Before, I wouldn't have cared. She was my devoted partner, and that kind of money was a drop in the bucket for me. But now, I took a picture of the transaction history, just in case. Was I wrong? A wave of doubt washed over me. Julia's phone was too clean. There wasn't a single trace of anything suspicious. Wait, where's the scholarship kid's name? The anomaly hit me like a jolt. Cody Miller. Julia had recommended him for a private sponsorship 3 years ago. His family was poor, she'd said, but he was a hard worker. She'd proposed a one-on-one sponsorship, and I'd agreed instantly, giving her a set amount of money each month to manage everything. But his name was nowhere in her contacts or her chat history. That wasn't right. I suddenly remembered 3 months ago when Julia had suggested Cody move in with us. He just graduated college, she explained, and was struggling to find a job and couldn't afford rent. I'd said yes without a second thought. Cody was already a familiar presence in our large suburban home, often helping with cleaning and yard work. He was always polite and grateful. Now it was clear it had all been planned. A cold smirk touched my lips. I felt around in the purse again, and in a hidden side pocket, my fingers closed around a second phone I'd never seen before. I tried my birthday. Access denied. I tried Julia's birthday. Nothing. Finally, I typed in Cody's birthday. It unlocked. My heart seized. With a hand I could barely control, I opened the WhatsApp on this phone. There was only one contact, saved as my baby. The chat history was a descent into a frozen hell. August 1st, the day Julia brought Cody to live with us. Julia, I can't believe I'm finally here with you. It's so good to see you every day. Me too, Cody. On your way home, can you stop by the pharmacy and pick something up for us? Are you sure we won't get caught? Alex is right upstairs. Scared emoji. Don't worry about him. He sleeps like the dead. August 14th, Valentine's Day. I had taken Julia out for a photo shoot and a camel at dinner. Cody, when will you be home? I can't stand looking at his bloated gut anymore. He's so disgusting. You're so much more beautiful. You didn't spend any time with me today. Julia, sad emoji. I have a business trip in a couple of days. You should come with me. Okay. August 20th. Julia, when is Alex leaving for his trip? I miss you so much. It's only been a few days. I know, but I can't stand it. August 28th, our wedding anniversary. We'd taken a new portrait and placed it on the dresser in our bedroom. Julia, when do we get to sleep in the master bedroom? Reading the graphic, nauseating messages, I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands and feet went numb. Was this really the woman who had been by my side for more than a decade? Were these words really coming from the mouth of my devoted wife? I couldn't understand it. She cooked for me every single day. She even hand-washed my underwear and socks, insisting the washing machine didn't get them clean enough that it bred bacteria. My friends all said Julia was the best woman, the best wife they had ever known. Reality slapped me across the face. This woman wasn't just a bad wife. She was a piece of trash. A wave of nausea churned in my stomach, and I stumbled to the trash can, vomiting until my throat was raw. The last message in their chat burned in my vision. Cody, come up early tonight. Staring at the words, my eyes turned to ice. So, Julia, I thought this is where we begin. You want to play games? I'll play them with you until the very end. I photographed all the messages, saving them as evidence. Then, I took the bottle of Aura Lube from her purse and replaced it with the super glue. My version was also extra strength. It wasn't just for fixing shoes. You could glue a door shut with this stuff. If they wanted a thrill, I was going to give them one they'd never forget. After I had done it all, I placed the secret phone back in its hidden pocket and arranged everything in her purse exactly as it had been. The click of the bedroom door handle turning broke the silence. Julia appeared, her wet hair twisted casually on top of her head. She was wearing a silk nightgown and had put on perfume. Definitely not for me. She glanced at me, sitting on the edge of the bed pretending to read a book. Seeing that I seemed normal, she let out a small, almost imperceptible sigh of relief. Honey, put the book down. It's getting late. I nodded, the thought of speaking to her making my skin crawl. I made you some of that herbal sleep tea. It'll help you rest, she said, walking in with a mug of pale yellow liquid. A few rose petals floated on the surface. So that was it. I finally understood. Every night, Julia would make me a cup of this calming tea. For years, I just assumed I was a heavy sleeper, out like a light until morning. The occasional headache when I woke up, I'd chalked up to stress. I was a fool. She had been drugging me. Come on, sweetie. Drink up so you can get some sleep. Her eyes were fixed on me, watching to make sure I drank it. It was laughable. I used to think this was a sign of her affection. How ironic. I could go for some grapes. Could you get me some from the kitchen? I said, making up an excuse to get her out of the room. The moment she left, I walked over to the window and poured the entire mug out into the bushes below. When she returned and saw the empty mug, a flash of excitement crossed her face before she quickly concealed it. She started peeling grapes for me, placing them one by one onto a small plate. Honey, I'm just going to go dry my hair. You should get some sleep. I feigned a yawn and nodded, then turned off the lights. About 5 minutes later, the door creaked open, and Julia tiptoed back into the room. I lay perfectly still, pretending to be fast asleep. She gently patted my cheek. Alex? Alex? I let out a soft, rhythmic snore, my breathing deep and even. Hearing no response, she seemed to nod in satisfaction in the darkness. Then she slipped out of the room, taking her purse with her. Cody hadn't left the house in 2 days. He was staying in the guest room on the first floor and almost never came upstairs. It was only 9 o'clock. They couldn't wait. I crept out of my room and down the stairs, stopping silently outside Cody's door. I took out my phone and started a voice recording. Heavy breathing came from inside the room. I was worried you weren't going to come tonight, Cody's voice whispered. I promised, didn't I, Cody? Julia's voice was breathy. There's a rustling of clothes. Julia was getting impatient. Julia, are you sure Alex won't find out? Cody's voice was laced with hesitation and fear. Julia scoffed. What's to be afraid of? I put sleeping pills in his tea. He's out cold, sleeping like a pig. Her tone was absolute. That's great. An inexplicable pain shot through my chest. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles turned white, fighting the urge to burst in and beat them both to a pulp. But that would be letting them off too easy. A beating wasn't enough. I wanted their lives. I had to stay calm. Julia, I'm still a little scared, Cody whined, his feigned innocence clearly exciting her. I'm not scared, so why should you be? Just relax and enjoy it. But I'm still nervous. Cody's words seemed to push Julia over the edge. Don't worry. Okay, just be careful. Julia, Cody said softly. Then came the sound of a purse being unzipped. There's nothing to be afraid of, Julia cooed. Don't pour the whole thing in, whoa. A blood-curdling scream tore through the room, a sound like a pig being slaughtered. It was Julia. Cody, did you grab the wrong bottle? No, this is it. Maybe this is what it's supposed to feel like, Cody said, moving closer. Suddenly, 2 horrifying shrieks ripped through the air at the same time. Julia, what the hell is this? It's stuck together, Cody screamed, his voice cracking as he sucked in sharp breaths of air. Don't fucking move. Julia howled, all pretense gone, her voice loud enough to wake the dead, let alone me, supposedly asleep on the second floor. Julia, I think this is glue. Cody's voice was now a sob, the intense pain overwhelming his senses. It felt like his skin was ripping off with every tiny movement. Maybe some hot water will help. An even more agonized scream followed. It's bleeding. Call 911. I turned away from the door, a cold smile on my face. Half an hour later, the wail of a siren cut through the night as an ambulance pulled up to our house. The two of them were carried out on stretchers, stuck together in a grotesque, unbelievable position. The paramedics and EMTs just stared, their faces a mask of stunned silence. In all their years on the job, they had never seen anything like it. It was beyond humiliating. The next morning, I immediately contacted a private investigator and a lawyer. The PI's job was to keep a close watch on Julia and Cody, while the lawyer was to prepare the paperwork to file for divorce. I also had a security company come and install hidden cameras in every room of the house. At the same time, I froze all of Julia's and Cody's bank accounts and credit cards. I was going to make sure they didn't have a dime for their surgery. Sure enough, by the next afternoon, Julia called. "Alex, why are my cards frozen?" she asked. "There's a problem with the company's finances," I said, my voice cold. "They should be unlocked in a couple of days." "Why? Do you need a lot of money right now?" Her voice was hoarse. "Not really. It's just, I went to pick up Cody last night, and we were hit by a car. We're at the hospital." I feigned panic. "What? Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm coming to see you." Of course I had to go. I needed to see the pathetic state they were in for myself. The moment Julia heard I was coming, she grew anxious. "Alex, it's nothing serious, really. Just a few scrapes. We can just get a nurse to look after us for a couple of days. You're so busy with work, you don't need to come." I let out a cold, silent laugh and agreed not to. Terrified I would discover the truth, Julia and Cody checked themselves out of the hospital that same afternoon. But their injuries were far from healed. They walked with bizarre, stilted gaits, Julia hunched over, Cody clenching his legs together. Their faces were ashen, and they carried large bags filled with medication, apparently purchased with a credit card that hadn't been frozen yet. I almost didn't recognize them. When they saw me, they both forced pain smiles, sucking in sharp breaths of air. "So, is everything all right?" "Yes. Everything's fine," Julia stammered, her face pale. "If you're fine, then go make dinner," I said, getting up and leaving the living room. Julia and Cody exchanged a look, their eyes flashing with anger and resentment, but they swallowed their pride and hobbled into the kitchen. Since Julia had always been a stay-at-home wife, and Cody occasionally helped out, we'd never hire a maid. Not that I had any intention of eating what they cooked. I just wanted to torment them. I couldn't help but laugh watching them move so unnaturally. "Don't worry," I thought. "This is just the beginning. I have all the time in the world to play with you." Julia, of course, didn't stay in the kitchen long, leaving Cody to handle things alone. A series of loud clatters and bangs echoed from the kitchen. It sounded like Cody's body was giving out on him. Once dinner was finally on the table, I made up an excuse about having to work late at the office and left the house. As soon as I was in my car, I pulled out my phone and connected to the high-definition feed from the hidden cameras. "Julia, what the hell is going on? Do you think Alex found out?" Cody was propped up against a chair, his face a ghostly white. "No way. He would have exploded by now if he knew. It must have been that sleazy company that sold us that crap." "Scammers," Julia replied, clearly in just as much pain. Her wounds hadn't healed at all, and the tearing agony made every step a nightmare. "Whatever. Just help me with my medicine." "Okay," Cody nodded weakly. The scene that unfolded on my screen was shocking. The super glue had done more damage than I could have imagined. A layer of skin had been completely torn away, exposing raw, red flesh underneath. Blood seeped from the wounds with every slight movement. Even watching it made my stomach churn. It was hard to look at. Half an hour later, they staggered out of the bathroom. Watching them, a bold new idea began to form in my mind. What would happen if I added a little something extra to their medication? I didn't hesitate. I drove straight to a specialty grocery store and bought a bottle of ghost pepper hot sauce, a vial of potent habanero oil, and a container of pure wasabi powder. All of it was top-shelf, imported stuff, especially the hot sauce, made from some of the hottest peppers on earth. When I returned less than 2 hours later, Cody looked surprised, his eyes darting around nervously. "Alex, you're back." I nodded and went straight to our bedroom. Julia was lying face down on the bed like a corpse, her body trembling. A strange odor filled the air. I guessed her sphincter muscle had been damaged. She was probably having trouble controlling herself. Clearly, her injuries were more severe and internal. To think they would leave the hospital in this condition just to avoid me finding out. Didn't they know how easily an infection could set in? "Honey, where exactly are you hurt?" I asked with false concern, then gave her a deliberate pat on the rear. Julia yelped and shot up in pain. "Oh, Alex, what are you doing?" "I'm worried about you," I said, a look of confusion on my face. "You were hurt last night. Let me see the wound." She frantically pulled the covers over herself. "No, it's fine. I just need a rest." But I'm your husband. I want to take care of you, I said, sitting down on the bed with a malicious grin. I bounced up and down a couple of times for good measure. Julia let out a scream that sounded like a wild animal, shoving me away with all her might. The force of it sent her tumbling into the nightstand, where her head struck the corner with a sickening crack, opening a bloody gash. But she seemed oblivious to the new injury, her body just shaking uncontrollably, her lips drained of all color. Wow, honey, that looks like a really bad scrape, I said in a low voice. Julia's face was as white as a sheet. It is pretty bad. Alex, I'm really tired today. Can we talk another time? Her voice held a note of pleading. I nodded with a sigh of mock resignation. I took a few tubes of ointment I had prepared earlier out of my bag and placed them on the pillow next to her. I got this from Dr. Evans. It's a special cream, works wonders on abrasions, chemical burns, torn skin, any kind of external wound. It's imported, over $1,000 a tube. You can't get this stuff just anywhere. When I said the words chemical burns, I saw a flicker of recognition and hope in Julia's eyes. Thank you, Alex. You're the best. Take a tube to Cody. I have emergency at the office I have to deal with. I won't be back tonight, I said with a sinister smile. Julia's mind was fixated on the words chemical burns. She nodded eagerly, practically pushing me out the door. Back in my car, I pulled up the camera feed again. As I expected, Julia was already rushing to Cody's room. Cody, come out. I got some imported medicine. At the mention of imported, Cody shivered, clearly having a flashback. Julia, are you sure? Julia nodded confidently. I scanned the box with my phone. It's legit, and the seals are intact. He pulled some strings to get it. There shouldn't be a problem. I watched them disappear into the bathroom. Cody's injuries looked even worse now. The areas where the skin had been torn away were turning a dark, bruised color. I had to admire his pain tolerance. Julia was in even rougher shape. Her sphincter was practically useless. The smell of waste mixed with ointment was so foul that even Cody had to cover his nose and mouth. Julia herself was terrified by her condition. It was getting worse, and the hospital's prescriptions weren't helping at all. Hurry, put the ointment on me, Julia nearly sobbed. How was she supposed to go out in public like this? In her heart, a furious rage burned. She wanted to find the scammer who sold them that fake lubricant and tear them limb from limb. Cody gently peeled back the scabs around her wounds and then twisted the cap off the tube of ointment I'd given them. A faint smile played on my lips as I watched. Julia, the opening on this tube is really big, and it has a strange, sharp smell, Cody said, confused. I don't care what it smells like. Just put on me now, Julia urged, her voice frantic. This one is for you, she added, twisting the cap off the second tube, the one I had filled entirely with the ghost pepper hot sauce. Oh, okay, thanks, Cody nodded. He squeezed the entire contents of the first tube onto her wounds and then began to rub it in with a cotton swab. The next second, both of their bodies went rigid. Ah! They both let out screams of pure, unadulterated agony. Cody, what did you put on me? I don't know. Julia's veins bulged on her neck and forehead as beads of cold sweat poured down her face. Call 911, she shrieked, her voice barely human. I haven't even, Cody stammered, then squeezed his own tube onto his injuries. A scream even more intense than Julia's echoed through the house. Cody collapsed to the floor, writhing in torment. Pain, unbelievable pain. The density of nerve endings in those areas was on a completely different level. Cody clawed at himself frantically, the searing agony nearly making him pass out. This is hot sauce. Julia, you bitch. Julia was dumbfounded. It was him. It was him all along. Just call 911, I'm dying. Cody held up a hand slick with blood, trying to unlock his phone. But his fingers were too slippery. Finally, he screamed in a rage. Hey Siri, call 911. I'm listening. Call 911. I'm listening. Fuck you, Cody roared, hurling the phone against the wall, where it shattered into pieces. In the end, it was Julia who managed to dial for help. As the ambulance screamed into our neighborhood, lights flashing, people from all the surrounding houses poked their heads out of their windows. An ambulance 2 nights in a row, especially with all the noise coming from our house, had made them curious. The doctor and paramedic who arrived were the same ones from the night before. The doctor's face was a mask of disgust, his brow furrowed in disapproval. You were just in the hospital yesterday, and now you're playing these games again today? Do you two just not want these body parts anymore? The doctor said, fighting back his nausea as he examined them. Well, you got your wish. The tissue is necrotic. There's probably severe nerve damage. And you, he said, pointing at Cody, stop scratching. If you keep that up, There won't be anything left to save. Get them on the gurneys. Notify the ER. Tell them to prep for surgery. The doctor ordered the paramedics. A young nurse muttered under her breath, a look of utter bafflement on her face. I don't get it. What's so fun about hot sauce? As the ambulance sped away, windows all over the neighborhood were filled with curious onlookers. I called my lawyer and the private investigator to check on their progress. The PI told me he had everything on both of them, right down to a video of their first secret date. He said he'd package it all up and send it to my email. My lawyer confirmed he had the lawsuit ready to file. With concrete evidence of Julia's infidelity and the fact that she had never worked or contributed to the company, he was 100% confident we would win. I paid both of them their fees and then opened my email to review the files. It turned out the whole thing had been a setup from the beginning. Cody wasn't some poor student. He just happened to bear a striking resemblance to Julia's first love, the one that got away, who had passed away years ago. And Cody was no saint either. He'd been using my money to play the part of a rich kid at college, going through girlfriends and getting into online gambling. He was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, with loan sharks hounding him daily. No wonder he'd moved into my house the second he graduated. He was hiding from his creditors. Julia had been incredibly generous with him, spending over $1 million on him over the past few years. The file also included records of secret transfers Julia had made to her younger brother, Kevin, totaling another $1 million. I slammed my fist against the car's dashboard, my face turning pale with rage. That bitch had been stealing from me for years. Since you two love each other so much, I thought with a cold smirk, you could be tied together forever. I called my lawyer again. I had earned every penny of that money, and I was going to get it all back. That night, Julia called me dozens of times. I simply blocked her number. I knew what she wanted. She was trying to get me to pay for their surgeries. They were both broke and couldn't afford it. Without payment, the hospital wouldn't operate. I decided to let them stew in their own filth for a night. Let them really savor the feeling. I checked into a hotel, ordered a feast of pizza and wings, and drank a six-pack of beer. Then I turned off my phone and slept like a baby, waking up the next morning feeling refreshed and clear-headed for the first time in ages, free from the dull, persistent headaches I'd grown used to. When I woke up, it was already 10 in the morning. I turned my phone back on. It was flooded with missed calls from Julia and a few from a landline number identified as Seattle General Hospital. Just then, the hospital called again. I answered. Is this Mr. Carter? This is the emergency department at Seattle General. This is he, I replied. Your family members, Ms. Julia Carter and Mr. Cody Miller, require emergency surgery. We need you to come to the hospital to handle the payment and sign some consent forms, the nurse said, her voice urgent. What's their condition? I asked. It's not good. We may need to remove some critical tissue. You should come in and speak with the doctor for the details. I stroked my chin. Remove critical tissue, huh? Sounds promising. By the time I arrived at the hospital, Julia and Cody had both fallen into a coma. Because no one had paid, they had only been treated with basic wound dressings. The room was filled with a foul, otherworldly stench. None of the nurses could stand to be inside. The doctor found me, his expression grave. Mr. Carter, the condition of both patients is extremely critical. You need to prepare yourself for the worst. He continued, the infection is severe. In Ms. Carter's case, the muscle tissue is completely necrotic and has started to decay. Without surgery, she will likely die from sepsis. The alternative is to completely remove the affected area and perform colostomy. She would likely be bettered in for the rest of her life, but it would save her. I nodded. Do the surgery. Remove it. I then pointed to Cody's bed. What about him? The doctor hesitated. His situation is even more severe. We'll likely have to perform a complete penectomy to prevent the rot from spreading. Do it, I said calmly. But for such a critical procedure, shouldn't we ask for the patient's consent? I waved my hand dismissively. He's in a coma. How are you going to ask him? I'm his sponsor, his legal guardian in this matter. My name is on the paperwork. Saving his life is the priority. I was right. On his intake forms, the line for next of kin listed my name. I was thankful I hadn't revealed my hand yet. Otherwise, I never would have had the chance to sign these crucial papers. I scrawled my signature on the forms. A moment later, they were both being wheeled towards the operating room. Seeing their pale, unconscious faces disappear through the double doors, a smile crept across my lips. Good luck, Julia. Good luck, Cody. And don't forget to thank me. I saved your lives. Julia woke up the next day. The surgery had been difficult. The infection was far more extensive than they'd realized. The nurses had come out twice to have me sign additional consent forms. The gist was that everything was a total loss and had to be completely removed. Cody's surgery, on the other hand, had gone smoothly, though he was still unconscious. "Alex, you're here," Julia whispered, her eyes fluttering open. The effects of the anesthesia were wearing off, and the pain was returning. I looked at her with cold indifference and tossed a folder onto her bed. "Divorce papers. You leave with nothing." Julia's face went white. "Alex, please let me explain." "Explain what?" "The whole hospital knows what you two animals were doing. By tomorrow, we'll be the top trending story in the city." I roared, pointing a trembling finger at Cody's unconscious form in the next bed. "Alex, it was a moment of weakness, I swear. I love you. I've always loved you. Please forgive me. We've been together for so long. I know you still have feelings for me," Julia begged, tears streaming down her face, her voice choked with sobs. "You love me, so you screw around with a scholarship kid in my own house? Julia, do you think I'm stupid or just blind?" I snapped, grabbing the collar of her hospital gown and pulling her up. "You like him so much. Fine. I've made you a perfect match. Now he's got nothing in the front, and you've got nothing in the back." Being pulled up so violently toward her stitches. "Alex, let go, it hurts," she gasped. A moment later, the meaning of my words seemed to sink in. Her eyes widened in horror. "What? What did you say? What happened to me?" she shrieked, her hand fumbling behind her, only to come back covered in blood. Her terrified screams woke Cody. The first words he heard were mine. Nothing in the front and nothing in the back. He weakly tried to call my name, but then he too realized something was horribly wrong with his own body. A horrifying, high-pitched scream escaped his lips. My, it's gone. It's all gone." His expression shifted from terror to utter despair, his face a canvas of pure horror. In that instant, it was as if his entire world had crumbled. And right alongside him, so did Julia's. "Alex Carter," she screeched. "What did you do to us?" I pulled the pre-surgery consent forms from my pocket and threw them on the bed. The infection was too severe. The doctors recommended total removal to save your lives. It was an emergency. I had to sign. I looked at them both. "Cody, you wouldn't want to see Julia die, would you? And Julia, you wouldn't want Cody to die, right?" Julia struggled, tumbling out of bed and onto the floor in a heap. Blood began to pool around her on the linoleum. The divorce papers landed right in front of her face. The irony was palpable. "You want a divorce, Alex? In your dreams. I will never agree to it, not even if I die. Your consent is irrelevant. My lawyer has already filed. Did you really think I didn't have proof of what you were doing in my house?" Julia lay on the floor, her face ashen, sucking in ragged breaths of air. You, Alex Carter, you are a monster." I laughed. If I wasn't, I'd be the one lying in that bed right now. "Enjoy your new life, you too." I placed a fresh, clean copy of the divorce agreement on the bedside table. The first one was already soaked in her blood. Cody's face was a deathly gray, his eyes vacant with a look of pure, nihilistic despair. He hadn't fully processed it yet. It made sense. He just had his primary tool confiscated. It would take some time to get used to the emptiness. Just as I was about to leave, a commotion erupted in the hallway. It was Julia's parents and her brother, Kevin. The whole nest of vampires who had been bleeding me dry for years. I could hear them arguing with a nurse before I even saw them. "What kind of hospital is this? My daughter has been here for a whole night, and you haven't even done surgery yet." Julia's mother shrieked. "Ma'am, the patient's fees haven't been paid. It's hospital policy," the nurse explained meekly. "My son-in-law is a rich man. Do you think he can't afford your stupid little fee? This is malpractice. I'm going to sue you. Where's your supervisor? Get them out here right now." Julia's mother bellowed, drawing the attention of everyone in the hallway. They stared at the family as if they were watching a circus act. News of Julia's incident had already spread like wildfire through the hospital. This family had some nerve. "Mom, keep it down," Kevin hissed, tugging on her sleeve. He was scrolling through his phone, looking at the day's trending news. Julia and Cody's story was already going viral. "What do you know, you little brat?" she snapped. "You have to make a scene to get what you want. Do you know how much that surgery costs? We can get them to knock some of it off. Isn't your brother-in-law's money your money?" Julia's mother slapped her son on the back of the head, telling him to shut up. The shouting soon brought a doctor out of his office. When they were informed of the full extent of Julia's condition, they exploded. "What? You completely removed it? She's only 30 years old. You've sentenced her to a life of celibacy. Oh my God, my poor daughter. You quacks have ruined her." The doctor frowned. "Ma'am, you can't put it that way. The medical situation was extremely dire." "I don't care. You're going to pay. If you don't, I'll report you to the medical board." "That's right," Julia's father chimed in. "We'll post this all over the internet and expose you frauds." The doctor's face was turning red with anger. He slammed a file down on the desk. Look for yourselves. These are the preoperative consent forms. The risks were clearly stated, and a family member signed off on the procedure. We followed protocol. My signature was clearly visible. My sister is a freak now, and you're trying to dodge responsibility? Kevin yelled. Lower your voice. Isn't this embarrassing enough? His father snapped, cuffing him on the head. While they were screaming at the doctor, Julia's mother's sharp eyes spotted Cody's name on the surgical bill. Who is Cody Miller? Why are you trying to rip us off? Are you charging my daughter for some other patient's surgery? She had found a new angle of attack, planting her hands on her hips, her voice growing bolder. The accusation that the hospital was fraudulently billing them quickly drew a crowd of other patients' families. Is that true? This hospital is that corrupt? Someone whispered. Don't listen to her. She's obviously just here to cause trouble. I brought popcorn. Anybody want some? Great idea. This Cody Miller is also Ms. Carter's family, the doctor said through gritted teeth. Bullshit. My daughter is 30. How could she have a 20-year-old son? Besides, my son-in-law's last name is Carter, the mother shouted. Kevin had already bowed his head, knowing that as soon as his mother brought up Cody, it was over. He had seen the news. Mom, maybe we should see my sister first before we talk about compensation, Kevin muttered. What do you know? The bigger the scene, the more money they'll offer to shut us up. Look at this fat-headed doctor. I bet he's taken plenty of bribes. Julia's mother yelled, making sure the onlookers could hear every word. The doctor was shaking with rage, unable to tolerate the old woman's abuse any longer. He thrust his phone in her face, his voice a roar. You old hag, why don't you take a look at what kind of trash your daughter really is? The video on the screen was a high-definition, specially edited version of the event from that night, featuring Julia, Cody, and a bottle of super glue. The words died in her parents' throats. Their mouths hung open, their eyes glued to the screen. This. Julia's mother was speechless. That disgraceful creature, her father sputtered, his face beet red, and he stormed out of the doctor's office in a rage. The shameful scene of Julia and Cody, like a sharpened knife, had sliced through their veil of hypocrisy, exposing the ugly truth for all to see. Even for people as shameless as them, their faces burned with humiliation. Amidst the scornful murmurs of the crowd, the family scurried away from the doctor's office like beaten dogs. When they got to Julia's room, they found me packing my things to leave. Kevin blocked my path. Alex, you can't go. Son-in-law, wait. It's all my daughter's fault. I'll make her apologize to you, Julia's mother pleaded, also blocking my way. My face hardened. Get out of my way. Julia and I are divorced. Hearing this, her mother's expression changed. She strode over to Julia's bed, grabbed a fistful of her hair, and yanked her up. You worthless piece of trash. Get up. Apologize to Alex. Ow. It hurts. Julia shrieked, the raw wound tearing open again, bringing fresh tears to her eyes. Julia, you're so impulsive. If you and Alex get divorced, what am I going to do? I just made the down payment on my condo. How am I supposed to pay the mortgage without his help? Kevin complained, his tone one of righteous indignation. But then, they saw the horrifying extent of Julia's injuries, and they were all struck dumb. Sis, you really went all out, huh? There's nothing left to even hold it in, Kevin said, his face a mask of shock. Julia's mother immediately turned back to me, her eyes begging. Alex, please don't be angry. It was all her fault. I heard there are new surgical techniques. They can build an artificial one. It works just like the real thing. Kevin nodded frantically beside her. Yeah. And then you two can do IVF. She can give you 8 sons. I was speechless. I was completely stunned by their words. I had never encountered such a bizarre, twisted family in my entire life. It was a real eye-opener. I always knew they were greedy, but now I saw they weren't even human. How could they say something like that? I repeated myself. Julia and I are divorced. Do not contact me again. Her parents panicked. No, you can't leave. My daughter is like this now. If you abandon her, what will she do for the rest of her life? I almost laughed out loud. What her life became had nothing to do with me. She had done this to herself. You've seen the video. She will leave this marriage with nothing. If you don't want this to become an even bigger public spectacle, I suggest you move. Her parents froze, but Kevin remained defiant. No, my sister was with you for years. You have to pay. For emotional distress, for nursing care, for her living expenses. I looked at him like he was an idiot, then pointed to Cody in the next bed. He's the one who did this to your sister. You should be talking to him. By now, a large crowd of onlookers had gathered outside the room. Many were recording videos on their phones. Some had even started live streaming. Kevin's face flushed red. Then he turned to Cody with a murderous look. You son of a bitch, he roared and threw a punch. Her parents, seeing a new target, joined in, pouncing on Cody. "How dare you do this to my daughter? I'll kill you. You animal. You've ruined my daughter. I'll tear you apart." Cody was beaten mercilessly, rolling off the bed onto the floor, his cries of pain echoing in the room. "It was Julia. That bitch seduced me. I'm a victim too," he wailed. "I lost everything too. Everything." His desperate cries turned to rage. "Julia, this is all your fault, you bitch. I'm going to kill you." He grabbed a metal force stand and swung it at her. Kevin started kicking Cody viciously right where he'd been operated on, drawing inhuman screams of agony. Julia's father was even more sinister. He picked up a container of hot chicken soup he'd brought and poured it directly onto Cody's fresh wounds. Cody instantly curled up on the floor like a boiled shrimp. The scene descended into utter chaos. Shouts, wails, and screams filled the air. It was like a scene from a violent action movie. Smiling, I took out my phone, recorded the whole thing from my collection, and then slipped out through the crowd. Later, the hospital called the police. Julia's parents and Kevin were arrested for assault and battery. Cody was rushed back into the ER and, after being stabilized, transferred to the ICU. The rumor was that the chicken soup had contained some special ingredient from a street vendor that caused an acute, massive infection. In the days that followed, Julia and Cody became internet famous. Their story went viral, and streamers and influencers flocked to the hospital to check in at the infamous location. Their hospital room became a morbid tourist attraction. Other patients and their families all knew the story, and they would constantly point and stare at them through the glass panel on the door. Occasionally, kids would walk by and spit on it. The hospital, unable to manage the situation, moved Julia to an isolated room in a quiet corner of the building. I received a message from the hospital. The fight had caused Julia's wounds to reopen and worsen. It was now unlikely that even the artificial reconstruction was possible. They asked me how to proceed, stitch her up completely, or attempt the risky surgery. Her parents were still around. That decision was theirs to make now. Under the dual torture of mental and physical anguish, Julia finally snapped. She spent her days smashing things in her room, alternating between fits of laughter and tears. The doctors and nurses were too scared to go near her. It suddenly occurred to me that being a widower would be much simpler. Why was I so hung up on divorce? It was like a weight had been lifted. After 10 days in the ICU, Cody miraculously woke up. The first thing he did was demand compensation from Julia. "Julia, it's all your fault I'm like this. Pay me. Give me $1 million, or I'll kill you." Julia just laughed coldly. "You're the one who couldn't control yourself. You want money? I don't have any. You want my life? Come and take it." Before she could finish, Cody lunged at her, punching her in the face. Julia's parents rushed in and began beating him again. This time, Cody wasn't so lucky. Several of his ribs were broken, and he was spitting up blood. He lost consciousness within minutes. By the time they got him to the operating room, his surgical wounds had reopened. He had lost a massive amount of blood, his liver was ruptured, and his lung had been punctured by a broken rib. Despite their efforts, he was pronounced dead. Julia's parents were convicted of manslaughter and sent to prison. Julia, having suffered a complete psychotic break, lost control of all her bodily functions and was committed to a psychiatric hospital. Eventually, unable to afford the high cost of treatment, she died in her hospital bed. They say that the walls of her room were covered, from floor to ceiling, with the name Alex scratched over and over again. I just smiled when I heard these rumors. I didn't pay them any mind. With Cody's death, Julia's parents were sentenced to 10 years in prison. The divorce proceedings were quickly finalized. The lawsuit against Kevin also ended in my favor. The evidence I provided, including the clear record of transfers from Julia to him, was irrefutable. I was able to reclaim every dollar. He was forced to sell the condo he had just put a down payment on, and the remaining amount was put on a long-term repayment plan. As I walked out of the courthouse, I felt a profound sense of lightness, as if a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The sun was bright, the air was clean. The road ahead was long, and for the first time in a long time, it was all mine.